It was at the same end, in the same stadium, and the same minute. Alphonso Davies was able to score in the second minute here at Khalifa International Stadium. Christian Pulisic was not. As he side-footed the ball towards goal, he took a glance at the linesman and probably thought he was offside. It was the United States' biggest chance at 0-0. The Dutch would take the lead 8 minutes later, and after that, it was pretty much game over. A game that would end 3-1 for the Netherlands, but in the end it was pretty convincing. The Americans will be very disappointed knowing that that was their moment, that was their chance. The Dutch are a very difficult team to break down, and you have to get ahead of them. Once they get the lead, they're going to be a tough out here at Qatar. Virgil van Dijk, Nathan Ake, and in particular Jurrien Timber are tremendous defenders, but this was a day for Denzel Dumfries. 2 assists on the right-hand side, a goal line clearance, and then a clinical finish for the third. The rightful man of the match. The Americans will be disappointed in the way that they defended in the game. Certainly coming into this match, they were the only team to not concede a goal from open play. They conceded 3, and it cost them. The Dutch will be difficult to break down in the next game, whoever they play. This is not a team that you get excited about the way that they used to be. This is not total football. They dressed it orange, albeit a different shade. It doesn't bring back memories of Cruyff and Neeskens and others, but they are efficient. Many other teams have played this way, including them in 2010, and got to a World Cup final. I'm not quite sure they're true contenders, but they could certainly go that way. It takes 4 knockout rounds to make it to get in the end to get your hands on the World Cup trophy. The Dutch will try and do that. As for the United States and all of CONCACAF, those 4 rounds, a massive uphill task going forward. In the history of this wonderful competition, CONCACAF teams have still only won 4 knockout games. Cuba did it in 1938 but took a replay over Romania. Mexico did it as hosts in 1986 over Bulgaria. The US did it in 2002 but against a CONCACAF team in Mexico. And then Costa Rica did it against statistically the worst team left in the last 16, Greece. Not exactly fantastic ringing endorsements. The challenge will now be for the United States, much like Canada and Mexico, to figure out how they're going to be better in 2026. They're already there, they're hosts, and they've got to figure out how they can get competitive games. In the end, this was a competitive game, but it was convincing as the Dutch move on to the quarterfinals. Canada said goodbye to each other here at Qatar 2022 on Saturday as they left camp for the final time. It was a moment of reflection, a moment of appreciation and true understanding of each other as a special moment to get together to finish off their journey here to the Qatar World Cup. In the end, it was the FIFA World Cup that they made it to. This was a special journey. The moments have come and gone to dissect their performances. We will talk about them as we go forward, but today the story of cohesion was there once again. This is a special group of humble individuals, great character and fantastic attitudes. In the end, we did talk a lot about what they couldn't do on the pitch and, of course, what they could do. That's why we're here in Qatar. Many different members of the media were here to report on that as well. It did not always go well back home. We have to understand, though, that many people now care about this sport. More and more people love this sport now because of what has happened here at the FIFA World Cup. Young children at school, different media members, different people around the world watching Canada. The respect for this country continues in the global game. For that, we have to thank those 26 players. This is their story. They were able to get here because of their remarkable attitudes, their humble beginnings, and of course, their fantastic talent on the pitch. Of all the years of covering professional sports, this was one of the best teams to cover. Sometimes we cover teams mainly down to the fact that it's our job. Rarely do we put our hearts into it, even though you have to put your heart into work. Sometimes you have to be neutral, for the most part, always. But with this team, it was always very different. This was a country that took me and my family in. This is a country that I learned to love very quickly. And this is a representation of that country that we should be very proud of. These players, these 26 players, will never come together again for a squad like this at a tournament. But they did it here. Yes, they lost all 3 games, and as I said, we've dissected and analyzed that. But they also made a big difference. They were able to come here and make a difference with the young players. The young players of tomorrow who have the identity now to look at these players and think what it takes to be a professional player. Many people got to know them when they were over here, and I was really pleased with the way that the media responded to that, for the most part. These young men are remarkable young players, but they're even better human beings. I've got to know a lot of their family members, and they deserve a ton of respect as well. This was their identity. They are a dream team to cover and a dream team to coach. The next step, their tactical identity. What comes next? How do they have more moments in games rather than just having little bit of moments here and hoping that they can win games in the transition? That will come. I know that will come. In goal, Milan Bojan is going to be back. He said he wants to come back, and with Maxime Crepeau and Dane Sinclair, they have a lot of talented players there battling for that number 1 jersey. You could say 3 number 1s. In defense, it's concerning. They need to get more depth. They know that, and with Steven Vittoria getting to the point where he may not play for Canada for much longer, they need to find ways of replacing him. Fullbacks, I think they're fine. Alphonso Davies can play there. Sam Adekubi's been excellent. We've got Zagro Guiar who can play there. Alistair Johnston, Richie Larea had a fine tournament, and I think they've got a lot of depth. In midfield, the next step is, again, to gain control. A lot of teams here at the World Cup have gained control of games because of playing 3-man midfields or destroying teams with a number in midfield that the other team did not have. Canada set that standard in the quarterfinals of the Gold Cup against Costa Rica, where they had Osorio and Kay and Stefan Eustáquio, arguably the most important player on this squad. Eustáquio's loss here was far, far too difficult to get over. What do they do now to build around Eustáquio and Kone? How do they find a 6? Is that Liam Fraser? What about Alistair Johnston? I think he can play in midfield as well and look to be able to build that team forward as being a 6 to protect Kone and the likes of Eustáquio, Osorio and others. Up front, we know what they've got. Track athletes, players that can beat teams in one-on-one situations regularly. No team completed more dribbles here in the group stages than Canada. They can be lethal in transition, but they can also be lethal in attack if they control games. Jonathan David is a superstar that many people picked on here at the World Cup, I think unfairly. We know what Alphonso Davies can bring, and Tajon Buchanan was the best player here for Canada at the World Cup. Kyle Larin will continue to score goals. They've got a lot of talent coming through. In the end, there's a lot to like about Canada as they all departed. They held their heads high, and it was a fantastic team to cover. That is the most important thing. You never forget how people make you feel. This Canadian team made a lot of people feel very special.